Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parasha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemet. Joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Sheikh, the Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed, New York City, Rabbi Kalmanovsky, fresh off of the plane landed. We are recording this Thursday evening. Landed this morning from Israel. We'll talk about that in a second. Just
I
wanted
just flew
to.
in from Israel, and boy, are my arms tired.
Very good. We are recording this on the fifth candle of Hanukah. We're going to light a candle soon. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a time of kitsch. But before we get to we'll talk about the serious things. Of course, we're still waiting for the body of Ran Zvili to come back. This week, everyone knows the Jewish world is reeling from the murder, the massacre in Australia. And we know that we have a small community here online, the Parasha Talk community. And we know that everybody's feeling the same way, wherever they are, all over the United States and Canada, and even a couple of people throughout the world, and people who just find us online and find us by accident on YouTube. We're thinking about Australia. We're thinking about the Jewish community of Sydney specifically. And I want to just take a moment to put the picture of, this was the picture published in the Times of Israel. There are only 14 of the 15 victims. And you can see what the variety of Jewish peoplehood. Jewish peoplehood is when we all share in confraternity this moment. Let their memories be a blessing. They were stolen from us, murdered in cold blood on a beach, just celebrating Hanukkah, and it's just it makes us all think. It makes us all think about where we are in the world and how these acts of anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic terror are part of the world. We we
You heard
mostly,
that
yeah.
you heard that while not formally claiming responsibility, ISIS said that they were proud of the shooters.
Yeah, this is it. So I'm shocked but not surprised. You've heard that many times. We also want to convey our condolences to the whole seminary community, especially our colleague Rabbi Shelley Knayes, and on the loss of Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Diamond. We spoke about him a while, and he was a guest on our podcast several months ago. We reached out to him, and he was part of it. You can look at some of the back issues of Parsha Talk. What can we say about Rabbi Eliezer Diamond? A real human being, just a beautiful, beautiful soul. A, a,
And I think for us, what we have to mention is the Ramah connection.
Absolutely.
He loved Camp Ramah.
Love Camp Ramah, and we all had, such a fond relationship with him at Camp Ramah. He was the scholar in residence for several years at our camp in the Berkshires, and just elevated Torah study and just the soul. He was a beautiful davener, and he became not only a colleague but a friend to all of us. And we loved to kibitz. Everybody loved to kibitz with him. And I think he reciprocated that. I could say Barry enjoyed your sense of humor. Jeremy enjoyed your erudition, and I think me he liked listening to a good story.
Eliezer was, he grew up really quite from,
Yeah,
and found his way into academia. And I remember him saying a number of really funny things about the different kinds of education that he had. But he said that when he was in high school, he studied Acharonim. That
yeah,
is to say, the late, the kind of Baroque, not broke, but Baroque, like
did.
pilpulistic interpretations of the Talmud. And then he got to Yeshiva University and he studied the Rishonim, the early medieval commentators that are the bread and butter of Talmud. Rashi and the Tosfot and the Rashba and the Ritva and the Ramban, etc. And when he got to the seminary, he finally studied the Talmud.
Yeah,
Like, that the that his Orthodox education had like spun around the Talmud, early at a farther distance, and then he zeroed in a little closer with the classical Talmud commentators, but then it stripped away when he got to the seminary and got to something very, very deep and authentic. And I thought that was a great comment.
Yeah.
I shared that at the funeral. Yeah, it is a great story.
Yehi zikhro baruch, may his memory be a blessing, and may we all learn from his teachings and continue to remember him always. So we are going to start Parashat Mikketz. This is the second of the four parshiot that are the Joseph story. I mentioned in Shul last week, when I start Vayeshev, of course, I have personal connection to Vayeshev, my bar mitzvah parsha. Barry, this is your senior sermon parsha. But even when we start Vayeshev, I feel like it's like, and I'm speaking as a vegan here, it's like getting a beautiful piece of meat, a beautiful steak, and you just want to prepare it nicely. You want to savor it nicely. I have no other metaphor. It just doesn't work with tofu. Okay, so
you put the tofu, you shake it in cornstarch. And
exactly.
Then
No. But the Torah is serving us this delicious piece of exquisite meal here, and the recitation of the story, the reading of the story, the immersion in the story is what gives us great pleasure as a story, the storytelling. Last week, Jeremy, you spoke about the clothing in the story. I spoke about the story as storytelling and revealing and concealing. And we actually said Mazel Tov to Barry on Rafi's PhD in Arizona.
He's a physicist. He's an actual physicist.
It's amazing. So here we are, the second installment of the story from the Parsha. Joseph is in jail. He successfully interpreted the dream of Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and Pharaoh's chief baker. We recall, of course, that the baker was taken out.
The baker thought it was such a successful interpretation.
Well, it came true. The butler was returned. The cupbearer was returned to his post. The baker, of course, went to a different post and was impaled or hung on it, depending how you interpret that. And 2 years go by. Vayihi miketz shnatayim yamim, and I spoke about that at a little Dvar Torah this week. 2 years is a long time to sit and to ponder and to think and to explore. And we have had miketz shnatayim yamim from the events of October and 23, and how the world has changed for all of us, and how it's changed as Jews, and it's changed for Israel, and certainly given the events of last week, it's still in the process of change. So.
But I just want to say on this point, Elliot, the resonance of that phrase at the end of 2 years, and of course and the immediate, I don't know, perhaps you said this in your Dvar Torah to the shul, but the immediate plot line of being in the pit or being out of the pit, being taken from the pit, being scrubbed off and cleaned off. So on my flight back, I watched Uvda is a show.
The 60 Minutes of Israel.
It's the 60 Minutes of Israel, and on the flight back, I just happened to watch one of them. It was like, I'm sitting here, It is not a high bar to make me cry. I'm a crier, and I'm sitting on the plane watching the 60 Minutes that was devoted to Omer Shem Tov, and there were so many things in it that were just so devastating. Omer was completely alone for the entire time. There were, of course, we know that some of the people were together at various points. He was alone the entire time. He was with a girlfriend, and it wasn't clear to me if this was a brother or just a younger friend or whatever, but they were returned in the November 23 hostage exchange at the beginning, but he was alone for over 450 days in the tunnels. And he said, among other things, that he sort of made himself the kitchen boy for the Hamas guys who were holding him. And it's not like he got treated well, but he got treated better. He cleaned the dishes and he served them food, and he just, sort of cleverly curried their favor. But one of the things that he said was that when he was still with his either friend or brother, I'm not sure who, Itai, Uh, early in the war, uh, the Hamas guys had an Al Jazeera TV on, and there was a Netanyahu speech, and Omer kind of crept over to listen to the speech, and Netanyahu said, "We are going to completely destroy Hamas. We're going to prosecute this war to the fullest extent." And he never mentioned at that point, which must have been October still of 23, or maybe into November 23. He never once mentioned the hostages. And Omer was like, "Oh my God." And then he came back and spoke to Itai, and Itai said, "What did he say?" And Omer said, "He said they're going to bring us home."
Yeah,
But took a little, for Itai it was fast, for Omer it was a long time, and it wasn't true. But that need to hang on to some hope. So if we can think about Yosef, Yosef at the end of the last parasha has given the butler good and to the baker bad, but in both cases accurate
So if we would
news,
play that out a little bit,
and just
we,
the hope. Like, I'm just thinking about Yosef. He's in the bor, he's in the Hamas tunnels, and he's got something, and he thinks it's going to make a difference. And then
it's
and then
crushing.
the
It's absolutely crushing.
crushing, and then the butler. He not only did
Forgets
not
him.
remember Joseph, he forgot all about him.
Yeah, yeah.
so where would Joseph actually think the help would come from? Are we thinking that because the butler said he would remember him to Pharaoh that something would happen? Or is it more abstract, do you think?
Well,
Uh,
I mean, I think I could go with both. I could say that, listen, I forged some relationship with you. We're not really on the same team. We're not part of the same ethnic group. I come from far away. You're a servant in Pharaoh's house, which is like some position of power, perhaps. And I helped you out, and I gave you good news, and I think I can trust you to do something for me. And I'd be wrong. I thought I could trust you, but I was wrong. Or you could say, alternatively, that Joseph still and all is Ish Matzliach. He is a guy with almost, it just strains the imagination to recognize how successful he is under terrible conditions. He's really gifted. Just ask him, and he's really talented. He does get the pipeline from heaven with the ability to foresee the future. He gets these oracles, and even when he's thrown in the pit, he's the most popular guy in the pit, and he wins everybody who sees him falls in love with him. And even from the pit, he's known as Ish Matzliach, the person of success. And so maybe I'm Joseph. I think my help will come because I helped out this comparatively powerful person, and maybe he thinks it's going to happen because, and this is true in the story. Damn, I'm good, and he really does have kishronot, good qualities, which will always make him land on his feet.
well, I want to just take slight issue with that and think he's ish matzliach for sure, but he's also ish naive. At this point in his life, he's very naive. He's very naive about the workings of the world. I mean, he and maybe that needs to be dissected to say that, because what was he thinking when he was going to the brothers? What was he thinking when Potiphar's wife was trying to seduce him? What was he thinking when the two incarcerated, the baker and the butler, are there with him in jail? That they could be trusted, and he does put his trust. And he had no other choice to do that, and he was betrayed by the
I think to
butler.
give him a little credit, I think he has a narrow frame of reference.
Fine, he
He's
has a
just thinking about what the task is at hand. So
right.
dad says, Joe, go see your brothers and find out how they're doing. So he goes. He's thrown in the pit. He's thinking, I have to get out of here somewhere. And someone pulls him up and puts him on a camel and sends him to Egypt. And, Pharaoh's wife tries to seduce him, and he's thinking, I can't be here. And he runs.
Right. I think there's an arc in Joseph's life that is part of this is the humility and
Humility.
I don't think it's so much humility. I think he's a spoiled kid who comes to understand the world doesn't do well with spoiled kids.
Okay, fine, but he does learn with a 2x4 smacked on his face.
No, but
Okay,
humility seems like the last word that I would apply here because I feel like, many, many years ago, I mean, you know how old this person is now, Magic Johnson. I remember Magic was young in his career, and he said, like, okay, when I'm a kid, I was the best player on the playground, and then I went to high school, and I said, yeah, I'm still the best player here. And then I went to college. I said, okay, these guys are going to be better. No, no, I'm still the best. And then I got to the NBA, and I thought, okay, these guys are NBA players. They're better than me. No, no, I'm still the best player here. And I feel like that's a little bit of Joseph. This is why in Barry's um, the stories that you just told, go find your brothers. Okay, go to the pit. I'll see what I can do. The Potiphar wife story doesn't fit the bill though, because there he acts with a certain degree of moral bravery and puts himself.
rectitude.
He doesn't
Or
get out of
cowardice.
the trouble with his confidence or whatever. He goes into the trouble because of his confidence, and I would call that like a major step of growth for Joseph. But humility is not working for me because I think that this guy
Well,
does
maybe
know.
humility is the wrong word, but comeuppance is also the wrong word. It's a transition. It's maturity, maybe.
Well,
It's
it's an education. I think
well,
what happens
that
is
at the very least is an
there's a learning
education.
curve. He's not making the same mistakes twice. He may be doing similar things, but I think he is learning as
I'll
he
just say,
goes.
not to project too much into the story, but you know, I'm 30 something years in a congregation, and there are ways that I handle situations now that I didn't handle situations 30 years ago. I've learned from a lot of mistakes, and I've learned from I'm not sure if it's cockiness or arrogance, but as a certain kind of say, well, I think I know how to deal with this situation, and then you realize that you don't know how to deal with the situation, and you realize that I mean, here in the Joseph story, and here it's and I don't have this identical experience, but it's placing trust in certain kinds of untrustworthy individuals and not knowing the difference. Now, I agree, he didn't have a choice. Joseph didn't have a choice but to trust anybody. It's not like there was a direct line of communication yet. It's not like he could call his attorney and say, "Get me out of here," right? There was nobody, so he held on. Look, it's what else would you do? And there are people that genuinely are good people and want to help another person and would go to the ends of the earth to help their brother or help a fellow human being. And there are people who say, yeah, okay, no.
So this raises an interesting question, Ellie. Do you think when Joseph ascends to second in command to Pharaoh that he does so with a desire to help people, or is he just helping Pharaoh and therefore helping himself?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think there's got to be something. Look, it's maybe tilted into self-aggrandizement here. He does see himself as a prodigious and capable and talented person who needs that spot, and he knows how to. I mean, if you analyze the scene with him before Pharaoh, he's basically saying the only person that could run this department for you is me, and therefore you must choose it. And Pharaoh is not stupid here. Pharaoh knows I don't pass up excellent people when I have them right in front of me, and any CEO will tell you that. Any CEO will tell you if I see an extraordinary, prodigious person, I will take that person, and I don't care if they come from a different field. An excellent person will excel at what I do, right? If I'm in a shoe company and a person's from, I don't know, a food service company, and they're excellent in the field, they're going to probably be good at manufacturing, selling shoes, and that's the way it goes in management. And so here, Pharaoh sees this. Does Joseph have an altruistic bone in him? And I want to say yes. In previous years I've been very, very harsh on Joseph. I want to be more conciliatory to him, and I want to be conciliatory in the sense that he's coming as a person who has nothing and is almost shorn from his past. And the one thing that he's got, I think, and maybe there's too much projection here, but he does have a relationship with God. God is channeling to him, and you know what? That's gotta mean something.
But it's striking though that the relationship seems to be one way, at least in terms of communication.
That's fine. That's fine. But
So, let
just
me just say one thing
yeah,
here.
go ahead.
And so Joseph, in that sense, is a transition figure because his father, grandfather, and great grandfather all had direct communication with God, which Joseph does not. And it could be that in this new situation, Joseph really is the best that could be because he does not have the resources that his ancestors had.
Well, so do you think he prayed in the dungeon? Do you think he turned to God? I mean, what does it even mean? Is that too anachronistic? I don't even know.
Well, I mean, that's what we do as anachronisms.
So by the way, okay, so parentheses, and this is evidently this is a known thing, and I only learned about it this week in a not such a nice setting. The New York Times has a couple of long articles. Probably there's going to be another one tomorrow about Jeffrey Epstein and where did he make his money and what is the relationship with Donald Trump and blah blah blah. And in the course of it, there's an article about how it is that he got hired when he was nothing but a high school math teacher, which, by the way, he never even finished college. So he had bluffed his way or lied his way into being a math teacher at the very prestigious Dalton School. And he got a job at Bear Stearns, and he didn't have any degrees. And Ace Greenberg, the famous investment guy who was the Avichai Foundation, he said, "I don't want MBA, I want PSD, which stands for poor, smart, and desperate." Like Joseph, I don't need people with a fancy degree. I want people who are in trouble, but they got real talent and they got a drive to succeed. And so just this week, having heard that comment or read that comment in the newspaper, maybe it's not such a bad comment for Joseph. Like, he comes before Pharaoh and he is PSD. He is poor. He's got nothing. He is smart as hell and he's desperate. And so when he says to Pharaoh, okay, here's the situation. You got plenty coming, and then you got famine coming, and you need the most talented guy you can possibly find to advise you through this process. Maybe that's what we get.
So let me switch gears here and go to the I guess the internal identity struggle in Joseph, which is something I'm thinking about in terms of what he names his children, but let's go to the question of identity and how he sees himself. And do you think he is trying to cut himself off from his past? When he names Menashe, and the naming reason is Hinashani. It's in
Nishani Elohim.
Right.
So this is where he has the connection to God. It's not that he forgot, but that God allowed him to forget.
Are you?
It's 41.
41 verse 40.
51.
51, right? Okay, so I have it in front of me. Yosef Yulad Shnei Vanim. Before Joseph had two sons, whom Asnat, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. 51. Joseph named the firstborn Menashe, Ki Nashani Elohim et Kol Amali, meaning God has made me forget completely my hardship of parental
V'yekol Beit Avi. Which suggests to me that part of the hardship is his conflicted relationship with his family. Because the last time he saw his family, they were ready to kill him.
So God has made me forget, which leads you to say that he wants to forget his past. I'm good with that. I'm good forgetting.
Well, he wants it not to hurt anymore. Right? I mean, I think that there's a great deal of pain associated with his upbringing and the circumstances that bring him into Egypt that are compounded by some of the things that happen in Egypt, such as the seduction or attempted seduction by Eshet Potiphar. And by being raised up in Egypt, he's allowed to let his past go for the time being.
But
He
Mike,
doesn't have to obsess
there's
about
too
it.
much irony here for me, which is he
That's the
names
times we live in.
he names his son. You help me forget. Except every time he calls his son to the table, he's remembering.
Yeah.
You know, I can't get over that. I mean, I've been
Okay,
writing about
I have to disagree with you here. So I remember when the highway in Chicago was named the JFK, and there's one for Eisenhower. And after a certain point in time, you stop thinking about Kennedy and Eisenhower. It's just a road. And at a certain point of time, when you call your child, it's just a name. It's not what the name means
So
anymore.
I agree with
I'm not
you
going with
that you
that.
get to, but I do feel, having
You
named my
can pick a different
children.
highway then. I have the
No,
JFK and Eisenhower.
and I maybe call me sentimental, but there's always a little fractional, aspect of meaning, and recollection in the names. I think about my own name all the time in terms of whom I'm named for, and um,
That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about people that you call by name, not how you
even
think of
even when you
yourself.
call even when you call your children by the names that you give them, if they're named after someone, I think on some level, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you're thinking
I'm
about.
not going with you at all on this one, Barry, because for two reasons. First of all, while that might be true about the Eisenhower Expressway, if it were the Smith Expressway, I'd be a little bit more inclined uh, to countenance the point. But first of all, Eisenhower is a very unusual name, and people will think about, even on a subliminal level, who that individual was, World War II, whatever, whatever. But in any event, whether that is true for people who drive on that road every day in the 21st century, the Bible is not giving us that story. The Bible is giving us a very spare story, not a lot of details, and it's not telling us how Joseph felt, 15 years after that. It's telling you what Joseph thinks he needs psychologically and can't attain, which is that's it. I've had it. I don't want to hear anything more about it. I'm putting this in the emotional closet, and I'm moving on.
So
And that's just
here's the
totally
thesis.
not
So
happening.
I
Okay,
want to.
son number two. What is son number
So,
two called?
so son number two is called Ephraim, okay,
Because
because God
Ki
has made me
hithrani Elohim be'eretz onyi.
fertile in the land of my affliction.
So it's
so
still the land of his
what is the land
affliction.
of his affliction? Is it Canaan or Egypt?
I think it's Egypt.
So he names one son about Canaan and the other son about Egypt.
But
And
both,
you're telling me that he does this, and every time he calls his children, he's going to think of pain. Amal or Oni.
I don't
I
think
don't see that.
I don't think it, I don't think the Bible is a realistic novel. I think the Bible is a mythic tale, and these two children, Yisimcha Elohim ki Ephraim v'chim Nashe, the Bible already knows. I forgot who said this, but one of the it was a modern commentator, perhaps, is that the just like with Rebecca, va'at hayit la'alfei revava, when her family blesses her and says you should be the mother of 10,000s, it's probably not just a poetic thing that they came up with at that moment. It is the standard blessing. And Yisimcha Elohim ki Ephraim v'chim Nashe seems to be an already standard blessing. And so the Bible is telling us a spare story, not a realistic, portrait of how it is that people, when they wake up in the morning, what do they think? It's telling us these are the people who represent Israel going forward. And by the way, there's this one midrashic thing which we talked about beforehand. I probably mentioned it on previous years because this is one of my favorite midrashic pieces. That when Joseph fakes that he doesn't, when the brothers come and speak uh, to each other, and they say, "Oh my goodness, we're in trouble now because we abused Joseph." They don't know that he understands Hebrew because Hamelitz Benotam, the translator, was interposing. According to the Midrash, the translator is Menashe, which is a beautiful twist because it takes that child whom Joseph said, this child represents for me that I forgot all of that trouble. But then the character in that little bit of that little freighted detail, well, he taught him Hebrew, and he, in fact, he is the link to understanding those brothers. So I kind of feel like, not I kind of feel like, I aggressively feel that the presence of Ephraim and Menashe is weighted with a lot of narrative and poetic power that is not like, oh yeah, you're named after your Uncle Chaim. I forgot that. It's not like that. It's you represent the effort to cut off from the past, the impossible, futile effort to cut off from the past, which you never will do, and you represent the ability to thrive even under conditions of terrible exile and
Right,
suffering.
but my point then is, of course, that these are ironic names because by giving him a name that makes him want to forget, he's remembering all the time. I want to say
So,
that part of this is, we're stuck. I'm stuck on this because um, I think as diaspora Jews, we see Joseph living out the dilemma that most diaspora Jews live with, which is, who am I, and to whom do I belong? Which culture is making its demand on me and demand on my identity, or how do I maintain my identity within the larger culture? Look, three of us are talking Torah and we're speaking English. We are speaking we've Judaized our English, of course, but this language is part of a different culture, and it's the vehicle of a different culture. We dress a certain way, we comport ourselves a certain way. Our lives are involved in very, very much in the culture that we live in, and we love the culture that we live in. We love America, and we love everything that has to offer. But we know, the three of us certainly, that we're differentiated on several levels, on many, many points from America. And, we live out, as rabbis and teachers and leaders in communities, very much differentiated from the rest of our community and very much differentiated from the rest of America. And that's a daily question for us, I think. So Joseph is
so,
somebody
but
that we,
the irony here, I think, is if we could skip ahead 2 weeks,
yeah,
at the end, when Jacob dies, Joseph is still willing to put his past behind him, and the brothers are unable to do so. So I don't know that I fully accept your mythic reading, Jeremy, because Joseph has forgotten, with the help of God, those elements of his past that have caused him great pain. But the people that perpetrated it, his brothers, cannot forget.
interesting.
I don't see either of them forgetting. The way he treats. I mean, I think he's in. By the way, not everywhere, because there are plenty of people who don't think this way, but many places in Israel, I saw these signs about, bring the hostages home. Non lo nishkach v'lo nislach. We won't forgive and we won't forget. Netanyahu, we won't forget that you did not, in fact, prioritize bringing the hostages home, and we won't forgive you. And I think that phrase has been appropriated on the Israeli left, but other things too, the Rabin assassination. And Joseph, I don't think that he's necessarily lo nislach. We won't forgive, because he does help them and he does feed them, and he would like, through his own kind of slightly twisted and Machiavellian way, to help have a family reconciliation. But he clearly is not forgotten, because what is he, the little trick that he plays up, he says, okay, I'm going to put one of you in the pit and the rest of you should go home and feel safe. And clearly he's giving them an opportunity not to replicate this story that is so heavily in his mind about when they threw me in the pit. So he said, okay, I'm throwing Shimon in the pit. And they all go, okay. And they leave. And they abandon Shimon in the pit just the same way.
Right,
Now,
but what do you expect them to do? Don't
I,
forget, they have the grain that their father needs,
so what
right?
I,
They have families in
yeah,
Canaan that they can't help if they stay in Egypt fighting for Shimon.
what I think the story is saying, of course, this predates this famous piece of Talmud that you don't know you're about tshuva until you don't know you're genuinely penitent until you've been in the same situation and you try to act differently. This time you decide to act differently. So they're all with vis-a-vis Shimon, they're also in the same spot they are vis-a-vis Joseph. We can make some money here. Ma betza, how are we going to get ahead if we just kill him? Let's not kill him. Let's sell him into slavery. And now it's Shimon's turn, and we say, well, what are we going to do here? We can't help. What are we going to gain if we stay here? Let's let him languish in the pit, and let's go bring home the grain. So whether narratively speaking, I have a better idea for them that I could advise them, I think that the point of the story is to get us to the position where, at the very end of this parasha, at the beginning of next parasha, they're going to come through in place of the abandonment which Joseph experienced, which Shimon experienced, which perhaps Benjamin is going to experience. Is he going to experience it? He is not, because Judah is going to come through and, in fact, rescue him from abandonment.
We're going to leave that with the last word because we're out of time. And that's a good way because we're all on the cliff. We know how the story ends, but every week, every year when we read it, we have to read ahead. Let's take a moment to thank all of the people watching and listening to our wonderful Parasha Talk, and wish everybody a Chag Sameach, Happy Hanukah, Rosh Chodesh Tov, month of Tevet. Welcome back, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski. Welcome back, Rabbi Barry Chester. Mazel Tov again. Comfort to Jews of the world that are mourning, and may we all have very, very comforting and joyful days ahead. Shabbat Shalom, Chanukah Sameach.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hanukah Sameach. Bye-bye.